Okay, so it's 5:10. We got a few more people on, and hope some more people will log on as we go. So I'll just go over a few things in the first to get them out of the way, and then we can start work on the priority projects, initiatives, and programs. So last meeting we went over the first survey, and as a group decided that for the group, the percentage agreement rates were high enough to move forward. But the group also proposed putting that out into the larger email to get feedback to see if anybody else was in disagreement. So we didn't get any negative feedback on that. So I don't hear anybody right now, unless anybody has a reason not to move forward. We'll go move forward with those areas of need that were put forward in the first survey as the framework for the legislation for the areas of need in the Maui County Code proposed draft. Does anybody have any feedback or a reason not to do that? Otherwise, we'll move on from that. Okay. And then the second thing is the second survey is out. I had one person tell me that they weren't able to access the link. Has anybody else had trouble with that link? Okay, so I've just had one person and I asked them if they wanted to troubleshoot it. It was the Hana Farmers Market email, but they didn't say who it was. Scott, do you know who that might be, or Lauren?
No, I haven't. I didn't receive any feedback from anybody, so I'm not sure. I'll double check it because we're going to send it out again this week. So I'll double check it and just make sure. But I actually just now tested it because and it worked. So
yeah, I tried to test it from like my phone, my son's phones, my laptop. I had Noelani test it from hers. I've had other people test it, and everybody said that it's worked. So I was trying to troubleshoot it, but if I don't know what the problem is, it's hard for me to troubleshoot it. So, but that's the only person I've had that said that they weren't able to access it. But our numbers for feedback on that one is actually pretty low right now. We're at 63 responses. Actually, we just got a response, so that must have been you. So if everybody can reshare.
yeah, I didn't finish mine.
Okay, well then maybe somebody else did. I also did another blast through social media. So I shared it like on, I think, of around 15 different groups on Facebook. So if everybody can put that out to their networks again via email or social media, or even if you want to go through the paper process, that's okay too. I also reached out to the Pacific Media Group, like the group had suggested. They said it's $500 to run the ad and then they would match it. I don't know if that's something as a group we want to raise money for. That's not something I can necessarily take on, but Akaku said that they could do a PSA for free. So I'm going that route. So I'll do that, but then if the group wants to try and raise funds to do the Pacific Media Group, we can vote on that as well. Does anybody have any feedback on that? No? Okay. So we won't go through with Pacific Media Group. I'll talk to Megan and see if maybe she can donate Pukalani Superette's time again, and then we'll see what we can get with that and see if, even though Pukalani Superette is paying for it, if Pacific Media Group will match it because it is a community effort. So we might try to work them that way. So yeah, if everybody can just share that so that we can get as much feedback as possible on that, that would be wonderful. Because once we're done with that, if we, decide as a group that that's, the percentages we're getting back are okay to move forward with, then that will be pretty much all we need to close out the legislative portion of these group meetings. And then we'll move on to the strategic plan proposal. Real quick, I do want to share with you guys just kind of how the results are looking so far. We won't go into them too in depth because we don't have that many responses, but they're looking pretty good so far. So the blue is agreement response rates. Can you guys see that?
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. So the first one for the experience in Hawaii is 82.5%. And then the way these are broken down aren't percentages, but you can kind of see the blue is the agreement, yes, is pretty dominant. So just scan through these real quick, but yeah, it's looking pretty good so far, but yeah, 63 responses is definitely not enough. I don't think so. We really want to push that. And then we got quite a few comments as well. So the people that are taking it are engaging, which is good, and hopefully learning too.
So Jennifer, excuse me, how many responses did we get on the first survey again? The first one?
Like over 350.
Thank you.
So yeah, I want to try and shoot for between 300 and 400 again. And I know the first one was long, so hopefully we didn't scare people off, but maybe put that in you guys' notes, but this one's not quite as long. So I kind of wanted to do the longest one first to at least get out of the way, but I'm hoping it didn't like make it so nobody wanted to do them again. But this one's shorter, so we can kind of tell people that, and hopefully that will persuade them to do it. Does anybody else have any questions on these?
No, Jennifer, I don't have any questions, but I do have like a little bit of, I have some feedback
Okay.
that, so for the network that I sent out to, a lot of people responded saying, you know, they just didn't really read the email. They were just like, oh, we already did this. Like they were thinking it was the first survey. And so I'm just not sure if that's maybe what's happening in other networks. And so I, of course, emailed back and said, hey, no, this is actually a follow-up, you know, in talking about the differentiation, but I think that that might be what's happening if we're sending out to the same groups of people that we sent out the first one. I think a lot of folks are like, yeah, we did this already.
Yeah, so I sent out an email to the group because I did have Evan Ryan contact me back and say, oh, I just read this other email follow-up and realized that it's a different survey. The first email, I thought it was the same survey and that I had already done it. I'm so sorry, I'll do this one, but maybe other people are having that same confusion. So I did send out an email to the emails that I do saying, no, this is a new survey. And then the graphic that we have on social media says survey number 2. So I'm hoping that works. But yeah, as you guys, that's a really good point. Thank you for bringing that up. I forgot to bring that up. Yeah, when you guys send it out to your networks, make sure to say this is the second new survey. Please take it, and they'll be, you know, reminding people that there'll be more, that this is, we're trying to engage the community throughout the process, which I think it's just they're not used to being asked this much and involved this much, which is sad, but let's make it the new norm. So thank you so much, Jamie, for bringing that up. Yeah, I think that's one of the things too, is people thought they've already taken it.
Mhm.
Anybody else? Okay. I did want to mention the mayor has tasked Carrie Capoy with also like doing kind of what we're doing to develop the framework and objectives for the ag department. And she was going out and doing specific interviews with people in the ag sector. And I guess a few of them, including William Jacinto, had mentioned my name. So I actually met with her not last week, but the week before, and she wants to work together. So she thinks that this, you know, this is a community effort. She thinks we should work together. So that's a wonderful thing. She's really, you know, impressed by the fact that we're getting so much input from the community, that the process is transparent. And so I've been inviting her to these meetings. I think she's been a little bit busy, but I'm going to meet with her again tomorrow. And then their group is having a meeting on the 30th at the UHMC cafeteria. So I'll go to that to try and interface with the folks that she's been talking to and just let them know that we're all trying to work together. Really, this is like a goal to try and help the community as much as possible and, you know, build those bridges so that, you know, we can just have a more successful ag sector overall. So if anybody wants to be invited to that, let me know and I can ask Carrie if that's possible. She's pretty open and I don't
Yes.
see her turning that down, but who said
I would
yes?
like to do-
Sorry. Is that
I
like,
would like to. Thank you.
okay, anyone else?
Jen, did you get my note about Patrick Ornelas and adding him to the invite list?
Oh, we can, yeah, okay, sorry.
Just because I met with him the other day and was just kind of talking about this, and he said, I'd love to support the process, but I haven't received an invitation. So it sounds like he wants to work with us too. And as the one person in the county who's actually tasked for agriculture, his perspective is important, I think. So.
Yeah, no, that's great. I had heard different feedback. I had heard that he didn't really want to be invited because once the ag department was established, he wasn't going to stay with the county. So I'm glad to hear that.
He said that. He said, I don't want to be the department, but I'm happy to help, like, lend my insight into what I think, how I think it can be effective. So
Okay, perfect. I will invite him. And if you don't see him, if I forget, just add him, just forward him the stuff, but I will do my best to remember. I'll add him to the Zoom email list.
So Jen, what about Ken? He's on the call. Ken Yamamura. Ken, would you like to come to this meeting? You have a lot that you could contribute as well.
Oh, he's muted.
I'm participating.
Ken, do you want to come to the meeting at UH Maui College on July 30th, where we'll talk to Carrie Kapoy about, she's a representative from the mayor, working on a similar kind of development of sharing of ideas about this new position.
Okay,
Okay.
that's
So,
fine.
yeah, so as you just heard, fortunately, those two, Carrie and Jennifer, have gotten together and said we ought to work together on this, and they both agree. And so having your expertise there would be just awesome.
No problem. Yeah,
And it
I
was
can
really,
come.
it was really great because, you know, she mentioned that we might have, me and her personally might have different viewpoints on things, but this could be also a way that we can model. You can still have different viewpoints, but you can still work together and build bridges. And I think that's kind of what we all want. So, you know, I want to showcase that and I want to do our best to build those bridges because it's really important. And she's been great so far. She's really a sweetheart and very intelligent. So I'm excited. Okay, anyone else? I've got Lane, Nicholas, and Kenneth. I'm gonna go through the screen real quick. Okay. Okay, after that, we are going to jump into this portion. Can everybody see the new screen? So the Google Doc, did it change over? Yeah, okay. So I went and combined the group notes from 1 and 2, and I sent this out to the larger group email, but we didn't get any additions. So I don't know whether they felt like, yes, it was good or not, but that's what we're working with. I went and added some of mine in too. And I'm wordy, so I apologize, but yeah, I think we can just go over this right now. How many of us are here this evening? We've got 6, 7, 8, 9.
9.
Yeah, okay. I think that's a small enough group that we can kind of go over and start prioritizing. So I think the goal should be, you know, we're going to do a PROS strategic 5-year plan. So these are the things that would make the most impact in the first 5 years. Obviously with the focus being on the first year. which would make more sense because that's what we're gonna do the proposed budget for the first year. So, you know, what we actually think is feasible for the department to start in the first 5 years. And so, you know, I would say putting out like top 15 to the community to give feedback on is possible, or we could chop it down to top 10 since these are big issues. What do you guys as a group think? Do we want to put a number to shoot for?
I think whatever's listed is important. So if we end up 1 through 20, it's good that it's there because it needs to be addressed sometime or another, so it doesn't just fall away. That's just my thoughts.
Okay.
How many do we have anyway?
Well, some of these are kind of like, they could be kind of lapped into one, you know, like combined.
But we just doing the heading, right? Like invasive species education
No, this would actually be,
within the thing.
yeah, actual capital improvement projects, actual initiatives, or actual like programs or things for them to develop in the first 5 years. So this is where we take those areas of need that we looked at in the, you know, survey and the community feedback to put into actionable steps that are going to make the most impact in the first 5 years. So, you know, the areas of need that we did the survey for, that's going to be in the legislative code on like overarching as the department grows. These are the things that the department really needs to focus on. And, you know, as the department addresses things, those can always be changed because code amendments happen all the time, but we just wanted to give them kind of a framework to get started on with the community backing that, yes, these are the issues, these are the areas of need. From that, we want to take that information that we got along with our knowledge and kind of, you know, cook that down to things that are going to make the most impact that will be actionable steps to address those. And so that's kind of where we're starting to head towards now. So these things that we're proposing in the top priority projects, initiatives, and programs would be either studies with actionable steps, you know, followed up after the study, and then projects, so capital improvement projects that would include like facilities or equipment or, you know, new distribution channels or legislation, things like that, or programs within the department to develop. I'm going to put the link to this in the chat and give you guys, I wanted to give you guys like 10 or 15 minutes to go back, read through, and add anything, just so you guys, you know, have a fresh start. You guys can look at what we did as a group before, and then add what's needed if you see anything needed, and then we can go back and start kind of editing, whittling them down to come up with some more. Why is it not letting me? I'm gonna stop sharing my screen just for a second so I can put this in the chat. Sorry. Okay, so there's the link to the spreadsheet, and it's 5:30 right now. So at 5:40, we can kind of jump back in and start talking. But over the next 10 minutes, feel free to read through and add anything. And then if we need more time, just tell me and we can do that. Sorry, Vince.
Jen, is it just these 54 rows?
Yes. Sorry, just what's on the dock. So feel
Okay,
free to
thank
add
you.
anything you want. Sorry, I muted because my dog was going. Jerry, you just joined us.
Yes, hello. Sorry I'm late.
No worries. So we're looking at that Google Doc. The link is in the chat. I think you can see it so that you can get on. We're taking a few minutes to kind of go over it and add anything else that we feel like needs to be added.
Okay, let me
Do
see.
you
if I
have the link?
Not yet. Oh, there it is. I got it. I got it.
Thanks, Nicholas, for sharing it. Okay, so it's 5:40. Do you guys want more time to add stuff? We want to start going over as a group. I'll do 10 more minutes then. Looks like everybody is working on stuff.
I'm sorry, I'm done. I'm doing other work right now.
Okay.
I'm also ready.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty much done looking
Ready?
through it.
Okay. Does anybody need more time? Okay. All right. If you guys want, we can come off mute and kind of just go down the list. We can start with water. I think it would safe to say that everybody has a concern with water. Just how we want to address it might be the difference. So we've got water availability, balance the natural flow with agriculture, water storage, again, storage, improving access to water, focusing on the watershed and reservoirs. And then, sorry about my lengthy one. I'm gonna. So I guess it was more for me creating a study to kind of actually look at all of these on a larger scale, to address all of it at once, so that it's more of like a whole system approach rather than piecemealing it. So
Jennifer.
Yeah.
This is Kenneth. I actually didn't put water as a high priority because we have the water department. They have the engineers. They have a long-range planning department which plans for future water needs. Now, if you set up this new department, are you going to hire engineers when we already have engineers?
So the
That
goal
was my issue.
yeah.
It's not that I don't understand why water is important. I'm just like, well, the water department has a lot of resources to address that. Part of it is what the mayor really wants to see happen.
So then, Kenneth, do you think this should be more of a third party, like somebody else? Because even though we do have the water department, these are still a huge issue, like the fact that our ranchers can't get water.
There's things that maybe not the actual infrastructure, like the design of reservoirs, or where you're going to put it. I mean, that kind of stuff. Still lobbying for water and, that kind of thing. Yeah, there's other parts of water that I would support. But it's just that the water department is set up for infrastructure. They maintain the systems. I mean, they get the contracts to take water out of the ditch. I mean, that kind of stuff. We wouldn't be able to do that. That's what they do.
No, the Department of Ag wouldn't, but they could do a study based on ag needs and,
there's been so
feedback.
many. Do you know there's been so many studies that some studies contradict the other? For example, when Mayor Tavares was in office, they wanted reservoirs in a certain location. And then when the water department looked at it, oh no, we got to put it somewhere else. So they couldn't agree on where to put it. So that's why I say the mayor has a lot to say, because technically the way the system runs, the mayor is the ultimate head of water. When we had the semi-autonomous board, they were in charge of long-term projects and planning, long-term planning. Every other county except Maui voted to put the power into the mayor's authority, actually. So it boils down to, what does the mayor want?
Yes and no, because like the council is actually talking about acquiring Wailuka Water Company right now.
That would be their purview, and then the water department though would have to manage it.
Yeah, and there's also discussion about like EMI, like the East Maui Water Company as well, purchasing that. So if those two things happen, there's like a whole revamp of the system. And currently also the system is just not working for the majority of residents. Like right now, farmers upcountry can get fined, but we still have hotels going, you know, at almost full capacity. So, you know, currently how the water prioritization and distribution, it's really inefficient and it's not working. So if it's not a study, what do you guys suggest that would, you know, what do you suggest would be the most impactful thing to do with water?
Fire them all. Stop with that.
Go ahead, Jerry.
You know, I think the Department of Agriculture can certainly take the perspective of the farmer and try to come up with things that are common sense and would be affordable down the road for the farmers. You know, I did listen to an interview on HPR with one of our counselors, and her opinion was that the solution to the water problems that we're facing up country is to drill more wells. But if that was to be the case, the water from those wells would be extremely expensive. And whether or not that expense is passed on to agriculture or not would make a big difference as to whether or not farms and ranches would continue to be viable. Because upcountry, the water for upcountry is all surface runoff. Sometimes it's pumped from the Kamaoli Weir. It's distinct from the Iao aquifer. So when the hotels have lush stuff growing, that's a completely different water system than what we're facing. And most of the agriculture guys will not get fined for using water to water cattle and to grow crops unless it gets really serious. So I think we being the Department of Agriculture and the agricultural community, need to make it clear that the county, the mayor, the Department of Water should approach and pursue options that will give us a consistent and affordable water source for what we do, which is growing food, whether it's got 4 legs, 2 legs, or has roots. And, you know, from one of the places that I was asked to comment on about 6 years ago, they were going to be pumping water. And they said, well, you know, for your farm plan, the water is going to be $3 per 1,000 gallons. And I was like, I currently pay $1.10. So why would I be interested in paying 3 times that for agricultural water? And so that's one of the things that has to be understood by counselors and has to be made clear, I think, to the mayor, that drilling is simply, you know, more wells is not the solution. Storage, I think, from what I've heard talking with people who've been here a lot longer than me, storage is really the way to move forward in the future.
Yeah, I think Jerry makes some really good points. And part of the way I interpret the value of what we're doing here is a lot of it has to do with education. So I sit in on the Molokai User Water Advisory Board. I'm a member. I also sit on the, ironically, I help co-counsel to the Sovereign Council of Hawaiian Homestead Associations, and their, you know, water is a big issue. I've also been attending a lot of the water board meetings, and kind of some of my takeaways from that is the water department has a lot of different facets, and even those that sit in the positions that make decisions don't always understand even their own policies. And I've seen that time and time again. So the way I kind of interpret this role is to kind of help, you know, the navigation piece, right? Like helping to identify those programs like Jerry was talking about with water, some of those programs are based on your acres, whether they're arable or not. So your rate is based on how many acres you farm. You may only farm 3, but your rates will be based on the total size of your farm. So a lot of guys don't know that, or that their water restrictions can kick in at a certain point when the reservoirs, hit a certain water level. And certainly in Maui, you folks are suffering. The upcountry people who can't access water, but the hotels are watering. It just doesn't really make sense. So I don't see a department maybe making, the education piece maybe ties that into the studies, right? Like where are we finding these gaps? Because there are certainly many gaps in the current system.
That's kind of where the problem is, and the gaps, and the department knows where these gaps are year after year, and it's just how you get them to respond. And if they cannot respond, like, what do they know that we don't, or whatever? What is holding them back? What do they need in order to be able to respond and fix the problem? And maybe if they share some of that, maybe we can all figure it out. I don't know.
Yeah, that's kind of what I see. Like when we were, the last meeting I was in was last week, I think Tuesday or Wednesday, and a lot of things were being said by the chair and the council, but they actually are incorrect. And so a lot of the public testimony was frustrated because they were actually going back to some of the county mandates and codes and correcting the people that sit on the board. So yeah, there's certainly some work there that can be done. I don't quite know how we do that or how the county plays into that, but certainly through education, or else piecing together, like Jerry said, we need to keep things affordable and that makes sense. And like, for example, right now, the hotels and the golf courses, the mode of action was to increase water rates, but they can afford the increase in water. So they just keep paying the rates. So now that the question is, well, what about penalties? And those penalties might be used to recapture funds to improve the existing system, such as having water storage. So it's pretty frustrating when you sit in the meetings because people, the users get frustrated because there's a lost in translation here, and it's just not access to good data.
My understanding is that right now the county is working on its water use and development system update, which is required by the state water commission on water resource management, and that is taking place in Shane's committee on agriculture and public trust, and that's I'm not sure exactly what the timing on that sort of being completed and submitted is, but I would see the role of the Department of Agriculture is really just to sort of be an advocate for the agricultural point of view within the processes that the county already has set up for making these plans, and that are actually mandated by the state, and not trying to do their own separate plan or try to do something separate outside of this. Just be the agricultural voice within the processes that are already in place.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of how I see this playing out, right? So maybe making alliances or getting other groups, outside groups, to find ways to communicate with the county, and also then pass that on to the next level up. I get a lot of phone calls from homesteaders who've had Hawaiian homes for 17, 18 years, and they still are waiting for water, right? So there's just a lot of frustration out there in the community, and I kind of see us maybe helping to bridge that communication gap.
I think as far as packaging for the council to make simple decisions, in my past experiences, just having that data and that information that clearly states that. So Jennifer, to kind of piggyback on your highlighted point, as well as, Kenneth's past experience and kind of knowledge on, all the historical kind of studies that have been done, it's really just about compiling the data that's already there and filling in the gaps where it's not, to basically gift package it for the council and staff to say, yeah, that's a no-brainer. But coming to it from the Department of Agriculture is where the value is, right? And I think that kind of encompasses what everyone else is saying of like, you have to have that strong voice and proponent for that area that can see, that bigger picture, but taking into account the wealth of data that's already there and, the 150 years of man-made water systems that are already in place as well. But once again, I think if you can package it and make it easy for people to say, yeah, that makes sense, typically things kind of can move in a better direction.
Anyone else? So do we want to reword and like combine all of these into a different way of saying it, into like educational outreach to maybe review the previous studies, work with the water department and the community to identify gaps, and provide education and actionable steps to address the agricultural sector's need, or something along that line? Does anybody have any suggestions on wording?
I would just kind of look at timeline as well, like, the immediate, short, mid, and then, 25, 50 year kind of process, just to include that. I could just keep hearing, watershed, planting trees, what does the long-term, forecast look like, with everything that's taking place in the environment, to just include that.
I agree with Nick, and I think what's most important though is to be able to have some kind of wording that gives the DoA some teeth to be able to speak to water, because I think what was brought up on this call will be brought up by, the rest of the county, and that like, this is not the Department of Agriculture's lane, and this is not their work, when in reality we know that the DoA will have a very necessary perspective on water. So just something for the sake of what we're doing right now, I think we need to have some kind of wording that like protects the department's authority to address water and to have a voice on water in the county.
Yeah, I would think that the department would be basically representing and arguing on behalf of the agricultural community, and so they should be seen as our collective representative. And I think for things like the long-range water plans that the Department of Water Supply is working on, the Department of Agriculture should have a seat at the table and certainly some input, and be able to bring some of the conclusions from those kinds of meetings back to the agricultural community, so that we can have the opportunity for input.
And one question I have is on the timing too, in terms of like when the department is getting up and running and actually to the point where it's implementing these priorities. Where is the water use and development plan update going to be? If it's already been adopted at that point, which I think is likely, then the role of the department may be less about having input into the plan and more like translating the plan into action that in a way that benefits the agricultural community, and that farmers can like understand the plan, or how it affects them. And it's more about implementing the plan than making the plan at that point, once it's already adopted.
I'm also wondering what role we play in helping plan for this future. So if we're going to increase food production by 30%, there's only so much water. We're on restrictions as it is. So how do we plan for that? You know, there's been already some talk just now about that the long range vision and goals. So how do we help, you know, navigate to those spots? Because I'm not quite sure how we're going to increase food production if there's just no access to those water.
Have any of you guys read through the the water use and development plan?
Part of it.
Yeah. So it kind of gives what the current usage is in all of the different areas, what the projected usage is, what the sustainable yields are, and kind of like some issues. But as far as like a whole revamping of the system, it doesn't really do that to what I've seen. So, you know, is that, I guess that's something that we have to, are we okay with the current water use and development plan and the way it's been going and will continue to go? Or is this something that we would like the department to kind of look at with a fresh lens and review everything and kind of, you know, give a broader perspective from the ag community's voice? So, you know, the what up isn't a new thing. It gets revamped. I think it's supposed to be like every 10 years. And right now it's already behind schedule by multiple years, I think.
Yeah.
So, you know, these are kind of ongoings. It kind of is like this information gets recycled. They use it to create the new plan. There's not like a whole lot of like outside of the box thinking. And there's been so much technology and development that it's like, do we want to continue using that same base framework, or do we want to kind of get a new set of like fresh eyes on it and like see where we can really actually make a difference? And like the implementation, of course, would always be the water department. That's not going to be something that the ag department would take on. But yeah, I think education is just like, you know, the fact that, you know, you're doing like countywide, even countywide, you know, new drainage piping, but they didn't look at putting in turbines to produce energy and things like that could help offset costs. So there's just so many things that can be done, where I think because it's been done by the same department for so long and it's been kind of like a recycled framework that gets added onto and just revamped, it's really not doing justice to what could be done within the county.
Certainly the conversation about taking the private systems and making them either public or community owned and managed in some way is like way outside the scope of that plan. And probably the Department of Agriculture isn't the place that should be like, that should be spearheading that, but is an important part of the conversation of, you know, those potentially really big changes with how the water system is owned and managed.
So from the conversation, I'm getting represent community's voice on water issues for both currently and long term, provide education on the what up, and to legislators of issues, and then work on developing storage and prioritization for agriculture, maybe.
Jen, you kind of need on ag development plan at the same time, in order to do a water development plan that so that ag isn't left out? I don't know if there is one.
So do we think maybe this isn't something that we should focus on at all in the first 5 years?
I think it's really important. No water, no life, no nothing. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really, really bad. I actually put this as priority number one, especially if they want to increase, ag by 30%. Stuff like it is. You need water and you need land. If not, that's just basically a joke. I mean, really, it's been put out there before, but okay, we're going to have more food for the people, but there's no plan, there's no support, all of that stuff. I don't want to turn into a pitching session, but
Can I say something, Jennifer?
Yeah.
I remember reading while I was in office at county, the Farm Bureau did a development plan. When Mayor Tavares was in office, they developed an agricultural vision plan. And I know it says here in 2010, they did a Maui Agricultural Design Conference. This was, I think, headed by the Farmers Union.
mhm,
So there's at least 3 plans you want to look at,
right.
I mean, to start off, rather than start off from scratch,
Mhm.
there has been some plans that have been developed.
That's the sad thing, yeah,
And
Ken. I mean, there's been many developed, and then the powers to be, they don't run with it. No one runs
yeah,
with it. No one
I
carries
agree.
it. I mean, we have an ag chairman or chair in the council, and you would think that that chair would you know be passed on whatever, but work on this thing, and then if there's another ag chair a couple years later, whatever, they kind of need to continue it, but it just falls to nothing. It's sad. It really is.
Yeah, that's kind of our role in the Farm Bureau, right? We can suggest at legislative level and we can lobby, but that's really all we can do, right? We can bring great ideas that we think are good ideas, but they're not always adopted. But to Ken's point, yes, there are already plans out there that we can pull data from or ideas from.
So then how would we like to, I guess, present that education? How do we want to compile that? Like, how do we want to word that? Because that's the tricky part, is to word it, right? Like, how do we put forth an actionable step for the department to address the ag sector's concerns on water? Because it's a huge concern. But we just need to find an actionable step or verbiage that can be put into place for the department to work on that will actually move that in the direction.
I think you said it short and sweet. Put it into action. There's no action,
Okay.
but they must have their reasons why. So okay, how if they communicate and maybe educate us as to what's holding them up, or they just dilly-dallying, I don't know.
And maybe there's ways where we can create incentives for people to preserve water, right? So there's a wide range of farms where some farms, the tap is running 100% of the time. And then there's others that they try to implement, drip irrigation or, timers. So that's kind of how I see this too, is collaborating and having a resource where maybe a newer grower or someone is looking for ways to improve their current situation can find that information.
Mhm.
Hi, Jennifer. This is Kenneth again. I want Nathaniel to understand that the water in Ho'oliho is a state Molokai irrigation system, so it's not county owned.
Correct, on Molokai, yes.
Yes. So we can't confuse who has authority over what, infrastructure, because now years ago in the early 60s, you folks may not know, but there was a meeting from the state ag department to see whether the farmers on Maui wanted a state water system. And it got rejected because the state deputy director who came to the meeting said he could not guarantee better water rates. That's why the county of Maui, the upcountry water system is not a state system.
No, you're 100% correct. I know, like on the MIS, that's usually coming from the state representative, right? Or we have to lobby those for access or improvements.
Probably, yeah.
But there is a way maybe too, though, the part we could play on the Molokai side is as an advocate and a voice. So
yeah.
But you're right, it's a completely different system.
The ag department has to be an advocate for increased storage and other, activities that could be pursued.
Yeah, and then there's the homestead users, the non-homestead users. So that's a whole other thing.
Okay, so I tried to reword this. So represent the agricultural community's voice on water issues, both currently and long-term, provide education on the what up and previous community studies and plans that address ag-related water issues, and work with the water department to help prioritize agricultural activities, increase access to water by the agricultural sector, and increase water storage at affordable prices to increase food security and the agricultural economy. So that's no study, but working with the existing studies, representing the community, and then we're talking about prioritization, access, storage, pricing for food and the economy.
Storage
This
is
is
going to be
Jerry.
great. Sorry, go ahead.
I would say that the affordable prices should go in front of, it should, my interpretation would be increased access or ensure access to affordable water by the agricultural sector and increase water storage to increase food security and agricultural economy.
Okay. Do you want to type that?
Can I do that?
It sounded wonderful, but I can't remember it.
Okay. I don't know if I can do that.
Or you can say it again and I can do it.
Okay. Increase access to affordable water by the agricultural sector and increase water storage to ensure food food security and I guess the agricultural economy.
Okay. Does that look right?
Just in front of access to affordable water, I don't know if we would want to say increase access to affordable water or ensure, ENSURE, access to affordable water.
Increased access to affordable water by the agricultural sector.
Sure. Yeah, there should probably be a few commas in there, but this is a good start.
Okay, so we've got represent the agricultural community's voice on water issues, both currently and long-term, provide education on the what up and previous community studies and plans that address ag-related water issues and work with the water department to help prioritize agricultural activities, ensure increased access to affordable water by the agricultural sector, and increase water storage to ensure food security and the agricultural economy, should we say viability or something like that afterwards? Or just economy?
Oh, yeah, I think that would be good to right after where it says ensure food security and a viable agricultural economy.
Okay.
Perfect. And I didn't have to type anything.
I got it. Yay. Okay, does anybody want to add to that or comments?
Jennifer,
Yes.
this is Kenneth again. You know, just this week, Judge Mulway said that the county cannot or needs a permit for that water injection. Do we want to put anything in there where we want like the recycled water to go to like places where farms could access that type of water? Because I know Bayer uses the water from the Kihei plant, and then the water also goes to the golf courses. But I think it's allowed for ag, and now we can't be pumping it into the well, so we got to figure out how to use that water.
So help prioritize increase access to affordable water.
I think we could advocate for infrastructure that allows the recycled water to be utilized by ag. I mean, to some extent it is, but not now. We can't inject, so unless we get the permit.
Should I say recycled and gray water?
Well, it is fairly clean. I'm not talking gray. I'm talking about they do at least clean the water. And then of course they have that pilot project in, I think it's Kihei, where they're planting the vetiver grass. And the vetiver grass is supposed to clean the water.
Okay, sorry, I was looking at the chat. Nicholas said yes.
So, but I'm not sure if we're still injecting the water, but it's not going to happen forever.
Okay, so advocate for the infrastructural
Yeah, so that we can take the water recycle water to where it can be utilized by the ag industry, and not just golf courses.
So Kenneth, let me interject a question here. When you say that the water is cleaned,
well,
it's cleaned to
certain
EPA standards, but do those do those standards cover things like salinity?
I couldn't answer that. I mean, as far as how good the water quality is, all I know is Bayer does use it. You can, if you're a rancher, you could buy it at 50 cents per 1,000 gallons, that recycled water.
So I think from my knowledge, it's
so if you go orchard crops, you could use it.
Yeah, you can use it for non-food crops, like non-food crops. So like grass for livestock, and then like non-edible crops where you're doing like construction or textiles, or also things like banana, where they are able to upcycle it through. So it's like another filtration process, but like for like cucumbers and tomatoes and things like that, you can't use it.
Well, we don't know, because they no longer, well, they may have difficulty in getting the permit to inject the water. They may have to expand the water treatment plant so that they can use algae or other things that break down the nutritional aspect of that water. So, but it ends up cleaner. I mean, they may be forced to do that.
You know, as another aside, I mean, one of the things that they could do is plant 200 acres of Gliricidia, Lucena, things like that, that are fast growing crops that could survive on stuff like that, that wouldn't necessarily be food crops. And you could use that to make a ton of mulch, literally. And so then, you know,
Yeah.
you can never have too much mulch.
Yeah, that's a different way of utilizing that resource.
Okay, so we added in the advocate for infrastructure and usage of recycled water in agriculture and increased storage to ensure food security and a viable agricultural economy. Is there anything else we want to add into this section? Okay, we'll move on for now, unless, I can't see the chat. So if somebody can, oh, here we go.
It looks great.
Okay, I'm like, sorry. It's hard when, okay, so I'm going to format this and then highlight it. It's good to go. Okay. Okay, infrastructure, we have slaughterhouse and animal processing, support deer harvest and slaughter that meets USDA regulations, community accessible mobile slaughterhouse, industrial composting, food access infrastructure, setting up food pantries and emergency food centers in Molokai and Lanai, institutional purchasing, mandate a certain percentage of local purchasing.
And back in Washington with President defending his infrastructure plan, but also the goal of doing it with bipartisan support. There was more, of course, but I want to get some first reaction from our panel here, starting with C9 Senior Public Commentator David Axelrod.
Gary, can I mute you? Is that your video? Oh, thanks. Sorry. I was like, wait, we're on a panel? What's going on? Okay. And then I put create 5 countywide processing and distribution facilities. They should be developed as co-ops so they can be supported by the county and the community, but then also be able to generate revenue. Facilities in rural areas should house commercial kitchen, cold storage, equipment libraries to process and pack a variety of ag products, including shipping and receiving bays to help facilitate distribution. And then the one in Central Maui should be focused on animal processing. So those are the things. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 of them are addressing slaughterhouse, animal processing, 1 of deer, and then we have 1 of food pantries, institutional purchasing, and composting. So do we want to combine the ones that are similar with the slaughterhouse, animal processing, deer, mobile slaughterhouse, and food access infrastructure?
Yeah.
Unless food access infrastructure is something different. I don't know what the group meant when they put that. Did you guys mean like commercial kitchens, processing and distribution facilities, or a different kind of infrastructure?
It related to food pantries.
Okay, so food pantries. Okay, so 2 for food pantries. Okay.
And I don't, sorry, Jennifer. I'm not really sure if this distinction needs to be made or not, but like, so for the island of Molokai, like we have food pantries, we just don't actually have a food bank, a center for a food bank. And those are actually 2 distinctions, a food bank and a food pantry. So just for verbiage, we might want to add in for the island of Molokai food bank.
Should I say food pantry / food bank, or just a food bank?
Well, I don't know the situation for Lanai, so I don't know what they have, if they have food pantries or food banks. So
It's a pantry, it's pantry system as well. They don't have a food bank.
Yeah, thank you, Lauren.
Okay.
And Jennifer, Jamie might be able to speak to this too, but with the food access infrastructure, I think it was in relation to emergency food access infrastructure, like in case of climate emergencies. And I don't know if that's something that we want to include here, but it was from that, the work that Molokai is considering having those access points for food, like the food storage centers in case of emergency. Is that something that would be appropriate to include here, Jamie? Do you think it's needed?
That's a good question. I think it might be a question for the group as a whole, but I do know that that's something that's come up with a lot of our needs assessment is centralized places for emergency food centers on the island. So I'm guessing that would be part of this infrastructure conversation. And I'm assuming the needs for the island of Maui are a bit different and that you already have that. I know you guys have that in place. Yeah. Jennifer, I probably would defer to you in terms of whether or not, or the group in terms of whether or not how we want to word that in this sort of section.
Do you think that if we had like processing and distribution facilities, if we set up like big hubs, that could be included in those?
So yeah, absolutely. Actually, so that is sort of what we're looking at currently, is trying to look at facilities on Molokai where we can have a food hub that would incorporate a food bank within that facility. So I think that would be part of it. We don't have anybody from Lanai though, right? On the call currently.
No, David hasn't been able to make the meetings, but he's involved in the like email list. So I can reach out to him specifically and see what he has to say and get input from him and Gabe too.
Perfect.
Jennifer, our emergency management office, do they provide emergency food? Like when there's a hurricane and they open a shelter, or they just provide the shelter?
It's been really bare minimum from what I've seen. The community
I've never
has gotten
been in
together and given food, but even with the big storm a few years ago where there was fires at the same time happening, they weren't actually even able to provide shelter. Some community groups got together and did that. So I think that's kind of an underdeveloped system as well. Oh, hold on, you muted for a second. Go ahead.
So that was St. Teresa's Church in Kihei. And the school was one of the elementary schools there.
Yeah, and I know it's also happened on the west side too.
Yeah.
I forget the name of the church, but they took a lot of people in as well.
So that's what's happening. It's coming from the churches.
Well, I remember the county did set up, I think it was in the gym, but the people went to the church.
I sit on Red Cross's advisory board, and Red Cross does have, they're the ones that kind of facilitate it at all of the emergency houses. And I do believe they worked with Matson and got a refrigerated truck squared away as well for emergency food storage. And then obviously the food bank here, Richard, in coordination with VOAD, and I think it might be called something else now as well. Basically, the social services sit on the emergency board to help facilitate that. But I think there could be some synergy with Maui Food Hub and a few others in that space for sure. And I just, as you guys are talking, it just, there's a lot of work that can be done in that space that I think definitely could be, at least in the social sector.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of building infrastructure as well, it might be worth having a mention on, building our emergency food system or emergency food response. Even emergency response for farmers, because it's kind of a matter of like, if not when right, with climate crises. And I know that in terms of food response, isn't the quote that FEMA has 1 meal for every resident of Hawaii in case of emergency. So they like our last meal is secured if you're willing to wait in line for it, and that's it. So just, developing a better emergency food infrastructure in a way that benefits farmers, I think would be very smart.
So is that okay, Lauren, how I worded it?
Well done. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm gonna take out the food access infrastructure because we kind of put that in these two, if that's okay, unless anybody has any objection.
I agree with that change.
Okay. So now for the slaughterhouse and deer and mobile slaughterhouse, do we want to combine those?
They're all related. And then the composting is sort of, it's not really related, but a lot of the awful byproduct, whatever, can go into industrial composting. They really need to do something with that.
Yeah.
It's just been thrown in a landfill right now. Shamelessly.
Nicholas mentioned hogs in the chat. So when we talk about slaughterhouses and animal processing, do we want to be specific on any types of animals, or do we want it to be kind of all encompassing? When I put mine down, I had talked to William and like doing different days of the week where animals can be processed. So that's cohesive, and we start building a system. And I was thinking, starting that on Maui first and then getting that system down so that we can implement that probably on a smaller scale for Lanai and Molokai. So that you guys wouldn't have to ship off livestock.
Well, currently, so I would just say on Molokai, currently our slaughterhouse has a HACCP plan for hogs, deer, cattle, of course, and I believe they can do goats and sheep now. So I think in regards to looking at what we can do on our island, we're currently doing a lot of that already.
Okay.
But I do know that there is and I have heard a need for a slaughter, like a mobile slaughter unit for some of the areas. Yeah.
Okay.
For custom use, really, just for custom use, for home use.
If you need a test for a mobile slaughterhouse, Hannah around, she's interested. They're trying to figure out how to meet regulations to implement a mobile slaughtering.
There's already 2 on the island. Jake Muse from Maui Nui Venison has a mobile slaughterhouse that's that they're using. I don't know how often, but pretty often. It's their business. And then I think Hokonui has one in Pi'iholo, but that hasn't come online yet. So I would think that rather than putting in money for like a Maui County mobile slaughterhouse, we would want to hooey up with private sector that already has some of these and figure out a way to make that easier for ranchers and animal people to access. I think for us as a community in terms of a priority, and William can speak to this a lot better than I can, we have 2 pretty aging slaughterhouse facilities on the island, and there's no bets anyone would take on how long either of them are going to continue to be viable, both Dequoit 1 and Nakasone. So, you know, if in the next couple of years those become untenable and close down for whatever reason, maybe, you know, the people that are running them retire, they can't meet USDA regulations, et cetera, that's going to leave a lot of the medium and small ranchers and animal husbandry people at in a pretty tight spot. So I think slaughterhouse and animal processing facility that could support both small ranchers as well as deer harvest.
Okay.
You know, you could combine those together, I think.
Okay, so I changed the community access mobile slaughterhouses to Molokai and Lanai and work with existing efforts on Maui. Okay. And
Yeah.
then for these, do we want to have them for the commercial kitchens and stuff like that? Do you guys feel like that's something that needs to be done? Should we propose that? Or is there not? Is that not something?
Jennifer, this is Kenneth. Unless I'm mistaken, on Lanai, I believe Pulama Lanai has a facility. Now, in the old days, this guy Gary Onuma used to have the mobile slaughter facility on Lanai, but that's no longer in service. But I believe Pulama bought a unit because they do have the state deer hunting season on Lanai. And so it wouldn't work if you didn't have a way of slaughtering the animals.
Okay, so you think Lanai has a mobile slaughter?
I believe they have something, yeah. And then on Molokai, I know Desmond Manaba, who has the permit to hunt axis deer, he was supposed to buy something. So it would be a private deal. But he was trying to buy a mobile unit.
Yeah, thanks Kenneth for mentioning that. As far as I know, Desmond has not.
Yeah, that was his plan.
Yeah, that was his plan. It has not come to fruition. So he's still utilizing MLC for slaughter purposes. Yeah.
But you know, he may have to provide his own refrigeration or freezer system because you can't mix species in the refrigerator.
Yeah, they yeah, I know they have different kill day or they have different processing days.
You can't mix the animals.
Right. So they do have different processing days. And once it's processed, they have a system in their freezer because all of the product ends up being frozen for the deer, for the venison.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for commercial kitchens and processing and distribution facilities, do we think that's a need? Do we want to word it differently? Do we think it's a need for everywhere to have one or not?
You know, Jennifer, this is Kenneth again. I wonder how many people in the community know that many of the schools allow you to use their kitchen, the cafeteria, provided you have a staff person while you're using the kitchen.
We couldn't get the
No.
schools to even help with food distribution during the pandemic. They said nothing on the campus was approved by the superintendent.
No, but yeah, I'm just saying in the past, I know in Kula, the previous cafeteria manager would allow you to use the kitchen if a staff member was there.
I don't know if that is the case anymore.
Yeah, you may have this COVID issue, but
Jane, do you know if have you heard
I
of
was
that?
gonna say that from time to time, we could get that to happen, but that's extra time for a staff member. I don't know
Yeah.
if they're paid for that or not, but from time to time, we could get that happen. It was not something that necessarily was easy to do, but it was still there and available. That's prior to COVID though.
And,
the rules may have changed.
and prior to COVID, none of my 120 students from the University of Hawaii trying to do commercial kitchen production have been able to go to any school. So that may have changed quite a bit.
Yeah.
I know from the comments in the survey that commercial kitchens, processing, distribution facilities were pretty high up on the list. And I thought that was a need kind of everywhere. So I figured starting out with one in each area would be a good start, but we could scale it down or be more specific or less specific.
I wouldn't scale it down and I wouldn't be more specific. I think it's just a general need. There are a few kitchens around and Hana has a kitchen, but everybody just needs a whole lot more. And if we're going to get to anything largely scalable and sustainable, we're going to need a lot more.
Do we want the county to develop these as like private? Do we want them to develop them as co-ops? Like,
the county can certainly help out on having some sort of standard plan that you can get a business permit to do, a building permit, I mean, so that it can be accelerated. Sometimes it's taken people 5 and 10 years to get a permit to do a kitchen.
I think I completely agree on that. I'm not really sure if we want them to facilitate that or whether or not we want to help them coordinate that. So it's a matter of having them back, whoever's doing it, if it's private or co-op related. And I think there's a real, and you know, Jennifer, I heard you say something between like certified kitchen and processing distribution center. And so on Island here, there's quite a few certified kitchens and they're pretty accessible to most people, except on the weekends. And you know, Nate, correct me if I'm wrong, but most of the folks I work with have access to a kitchen when they need one. A processing distribution center is definitely different than what we have here in terms of like certified kitchens. So I think that if we're talking about processing distribution centers, there's a definite need where we are, but I think in terms of mandating like certified kitchens, we have a lot of them. And not the certified kitchens aren't connected currently to a processing distribution center because we don't have one. Does that make sense what I'm kind of clarifying?
I think Lanai did have an issue needing more commercial kitchens.
Yep,
and then
okay.
I know on Maui that there is a big need for commercial kitchens.
Okay.
Well, Jennifer, I believe in Dole Park, the county funded building a commercial kitchen in the old, I think it was a community center.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Parks Department was supposed to have performed that project. Now, when I was working for the county, I tried to get the old Hana Elementary School kitchen to be, you know, retrofitted to be a commercial kitchen. But when I talked to the purchasing person, Greg King, he said, you know, you don't have any experience in doing this kind of project. So he recommended that I not pursue that. But I stopped because the Parks Department was doing something on Lanai. I said, once he goes through that, he would have the expertise to build a kitchen. He would know everything he needs to do.
Yeah, the one on Lanai seems pretty minimal from what I saw.
But I'm just saying, he
Yeah.
has some experience to get it through and on a county facility.
And they just got approval to purchase the ag park. So as they expand their agricultural activities over there, I'm guessing the need for commercial kitchens will expand as well.
You should talk to Dave Ember about that, Jennifer. Talk to Dave Ember about that.
Okay.
There is a commercial kitchen available, but it's very expensive and it's not worth it to have to pay all that money in order to use it. So he's trying to establish his own, but he needs an electrical setup that's going to cost him $62,000.
Ooh.
Yeah. I'd say in general, there's so much, each situation is so unique from community to community that it's really hard for us to, like, at this point say what model it should be or whatever. So something very general of just supporting communities' need for agricultural processing, and value added capacity, something along those lines that's general, but not tying us into some specific model of whether it's owned by the county or co-op or this or that, because it's all different.
I agree. That's really critical that it's not tied down one way or the other. I don't know if you would actually address this, but the actual need for refrigerated storage is almost even more critical than the commercial kitchens. If we think about what we're going to do value added long term, I mean, seriously, if we're going to become a production place for feeding the world, we're going to need some serious activity in building and making things. So you gotta be able to set the foundation and infrastructure for all that.
Jennifer, this is Kenneth again. I hope everybody realizes that when you have a restaurant that was in business and then closes down, essentially that facility was a commercial kitchen. So maybe the ag department can be urged to do a quick survey to see how much closed restaurant space do we have. I mean, technically, it's a kitchen.
I would agree. We got to figure out how much capacity we do have, but a kitchen for a restaurant is not a production facility for making 100,000 bottles of pickles a day. So we got to think.
That's what the University of Hawaii was trying to develop.
Yeah, I'm
in the
part
old
of that.
area, right?
Yes.
So
it's almost ready.
If you want quantity, you go there.
Well, yeah, yes, they didn't deliver on that promise.
Well, I just think that was supposed to be the plan.
Yes, it ended up getting designed as a training facility, not a production facility. So.
Oh, well, the original plan was.
I know.
They could produce, which made a whole lot of sense.
Yep.
Okay,
And
so.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No problem. Go ahead.
So I put support community-wide needs for commercial kitchens, USDA compliant slaughterhouses to process animals, and processing and distribution facilities for general ag products as well, including cold storage and equipment.
Yeah. Nice.
Do we need to add anything to that?
You guys think it's important to put in not only processing, but also testing?
Yes.
I know a lot of ranchers and farmers have to actually, if there is an outbreak on one farm, all adjacent farm have to actually test all of their head of cattle or hogs or whatever, and it's very, very expensive.
Well, you got TB now.
Yeah, I think on Molokai, I heard there was actually one case, but now all of the cattle ranchers have to go out and test every one of their animals.
Yeah, you have to.
Okay, so livestock testing Should that be in a separate thing than the commercial kitchens processing and distribution? Just
I mean, it could be, I think that also kind of ties into the meat inspection. So like for example, harvesting deer, there's very strict protocols on how you can harvest a deer to actually be sold as a commercial product. That's partly why, like on Molokai, we have, as was mentioned earlier, you actually only one, we had one guy, was Desmond, who could actually harvest deer because he actually had a USDA officer on site and would actually, at the time of the harvest, would inspect the animal. But the majority of hunters don't have access to that. So I don't know if that ties into here or not, but inspections and testing comes before slaughter. So I don't know if that ties in or not.
what do you guys
That would
think?
probably should be in with the slaughter facility on the live part, but they do also test. There's an E. coli test that they do randomly, like once a month, and it's really costly, like you said. And the guy here, the meat is sent to Oahu for testing, and then you gotta wait so many hours, and then then the results come back, and you pay for all the shipping of the meat to Oahu.
Yeah, it's very expensive. I've talked to several ranchers who are actually considering this cattle.
Yeah, Kyle was saying he could do it here if they would just approve him or what, and one more thing on his plate, but he can do it in less than 20 minutes for $10 for the kit or whatever. And you don't need to work, because what they do is they take a 50-pound section of a carcass at random and make burger out of the whole thing. And of that 50-pound sample, they take, I think it's 8 pounds, and send that off to Oahu. In the meantime, you gotta freeze the rest of the product, and the rancher is waiting for the result in order for them to do it, to finish the job. So it is, you're right about the testing part. There is a meat test, and there's also live testing too. If there's an outbreak, then there's live testing.
Okay, so maybe we make these, I mean, even though, should we make it all one, or should I make the USDA compliant, including livestock inspection and testing slaughterhouses to process animals, separate from the general ag products?
I think it's separate.
I think
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
certified kitchen is completely different.
Yeah. But Jennifer, I would add to the certified kitchen, it would be useful if we had food testing in terms of shelf life and nutrition locally here in Maui County, instead of like everything else having to ship it off to Oahu in like 16 weeks.
Okay, so adding that into the processing and distribution, the testing, or separate?
Yes, into the processing and pre-approval nutritional testing and shelf life testing. You have to get that.
Sorry, Gary, I have a question. Does Maui Food and Innovation Center not do that for you guys over there?
No, we don't. We don't have the capability. So if somebody asks us to do it, we will send it to Oahu at your expense, and it's at least $75.
Including cold storage and testing, or does it need to be more specific than testing?
Well, it's new. Yeah, it's a different kind of testing than Nate was talking about.
Okay.
So it's nutritional and food safety and ingredients testing. It's a whole food science thing. It's really critical for value add food. It's for your labeling.
Nutritional, food safety, and testing?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay, so does that look okay?
Yes.
I'm gonna add support DoA USDA compliant livestock slaughterhouses to process animals. Okay. Okay, and then we've got, these ones are okay. I'm gonna check earlier, industrial composting, do we want that into be with infrastructure, resource regeneration and protection? I guess it doesn't really matter because we're putting these as priorities. But we had other composting stuff down here. Down here. So can I move it down here?
Yeah.
Okay, and we'll get to it with the other two. Okay. Okay, so then the next one is, sorry, research and development. So we have data collection and data awareness, start as soon as possible and keep it up season by season to understand who has the food and who wants it, coordinate with research institutions, community assessments, ozone treatment, access grants and available money, establish a pipeline database for farmers to access available resources, advocate to get more funds for local use, blanket grants to allow farmers to hui up and apply collectively for grants, grant writers on staff to provide a technical assistance, create a research and development division in the department that works with the community to identify issues, researches solutions, and create action plans to address issues, also develops databases to collect and collate the data needed for the department in the ag sector. Review all ag related permitting processes within the county, develop a new ag department managed process with one streamlined permit application. The department should hire a minimum of 3 on-spud inspectors and train them in order to have consistent inspections. The information gathered via the new department permitting process would be distributed to the other departments in order to minimize barriers for like local stakeholders. This would help minimize faux farms plans. And then hire a minimum of 4 grant writers, 2 to focus on capital improvement project funding for the county via the department, and 2 to focus on blanket grants for the community-based needs, with one of the 2 specifically focused on servicing Molokai and Lanai. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 on data. Do we want to combine these? Or keep them separate? So we've got data collection, data awareness, coordinate with research institutions, community assessments, and then a division to identify issues, research solutions, create action plans, and collect and collate data. Do we want to keep them separate or combine?
It seems like you could combine all the stuff associated with grant writing and access grants to available money and a pipeline and database.
Okay.
It's pretty clear that grants seem to be pretty important from the community perspective.
I would agree with all the grant stuff minus the database. That's actually separate and it's used in grant writing, but you need it for different other things.
I'm gonna put them next to each other when they're similar, and then we can word them to get a cohesive language for them. Okay, let's start with the first one. Okay, data collection and data awareness, start as soon as possible, keep it up season by season, who has food and who wants it. Establish a pipeline and database for farmers to access available resources. Coordinate with research institutions, community assessments, and then a division to identify issues, research solutions, create action plans, to develop databases and collect and collate data.
So what's being coordinated with the research institutes?
Remember in the second survey, we put a list of things that groups are already researching and collecting data on. So instead of the department going out and duplicating those efforts, they would just collect and collate that information. And then there were another group of topics that the department would have to go out and start collecting the data on that information that wasn't currently being conducted. Okay, Nate's got to go. Thank you so much, Nate. We'll probably work on this again next time, so you'll have time to go over it then too. So do we want to take out what I put, the create a division? It doesn't necessarily need to be a division. I guess they can decide how they want to do that.
Well, that's certainly a section, but you're gonna need an IT department or section, or I would say division, but yeah, you need some unique portion department.
Maybe you just call it a capacity and then you let the department identify if it's going to be a division or what. So it would be create a capacity for research and development in the department.
Okay, create the capacity for research and development in Jamie's got to go too. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next meeting. I'm sorry, what?
I said, Jerry, that's a good idea.
Okay. And then, so create the capacity for research and development within the department too, and then we can list these things? Or do we want to combine them even more?
I would just leave it as is.
Just this, create the capacity for research and development within the department.
Right.
Okay.
The only thing I would add maybe is remind them of who does research and development. I don't know, you know.
Okay.
But that's too much maybe for them to process. This is good.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. They're very obvious sites, the university and USDA.
So Jennifer, I want to ask you, in the past, the OED office used to, we had a $100,000 grant generally, about that much, with the college. And this is for the CTAR staff, and they would propose projects. Now, if you're gonna do all this data stuff, you still need the 100,000 to go to CTAR or not?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
the difference.
absolutely.
Yeah, difference between research and data collection.
No, but they do research. They do research projects.
I agree. That's the 100,000 is for their research. The research is based on the data collected and other observations. So yes, you would still need it.
Yeah, I
know,
think it
but-
would still be needed too, because the things that UHCTAR are going to research are going to be different. The department's going to coordinate with UHCTAR. They're not going to duplicate efforts. But there's still a lot of research and development that needs to be done for the department to address the agricultural sector's needs that UHCTAR is not doing. So they would still need the money to do the work that they're doing. We wouldn't want to take that away from them, but we would need to develop additional research and development efforts for the department.
For example, you'd send CTAR out to look at coffee borer beetles or the coffee rust. You'd want their experts to do research and bring it back and do some other research on samples they collect.
Oops.
Gary, were you still talking? I think you trailed off a little bit.
Yeah.
Just kind of my voice.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was like, oh, I didn't catch that. Okay. Does that make sense, Kenneth?
Well, you know, I took a look at the people that I used to work with. A lot of the staff has retired. Like, I believe Lynn Nakamura Tengan has retired.
Yes.
Robin Shimabuku. I
Yes.
think Norman Nagata retired.
Yes.
Elton Arakaki. So all this expertise is gone.
Yes.
So I don't. When you look at the staff, it doesn't tell you what they do. In other words, I know what Kyle does. He's livestock, but the rest of them, I have no idea what they were hired to do. Is it for vegetable production? And even what's her name? She moved to Hilo. Kylie.
Yes.
So you have a turnover, and I have no idea what their expertise is. What would they research? I have no idea.
Yeah, you got to let them handle that issue because they're trying to ramp up and hire new people and get funding to do all that. So we really should rely on them to do the R&D in
Well,
plant.
that's my concern. I wouldn't. I don't know what their expertise is. The people coming on board.
Yeah, no, I think they need to still be funded and do what they do. But like, for example, with the slaughterhouses and the commercial kitchens and the processing distribution facility, that wouldn't be something that we would expect UHCTAR to take on. That would be something that the department's research and development division would take on. So they would be simultaneously working together. They might pull information from UHCTAR on what's currently growing and what equipment should be purchased first, dependent on the number of growers with specific crops. But they wouldn't task them with doing that whole research and development portion for the processing and distribution facilities, if that makes sense.
It does. Jennifer, it wouldn't hurt to give CTAR some requirements that we would like to see in their research. So it would be helpful if they knew what the demand was so that they could budget and ask for it. But yeah, so as people retire, they need to know whether there's a demand to replace that person or that functionality, or whether we don't need it anymore. It's like a sugarcane expert.
Yeah, I think the dean makes the final choices, though.
Yeah. He has a very sharp knife.
Okay. So we've got create the capacity for research and development within the department. And then do we want to kind of bullet point what that sector would do so that the community understands that we're not trying to compete with CTAR, that it would be coordinate with research institutions, establish a pipeline and database for farmers to access available data, research issues and solutions, and then create action plans for the department to, develop things like that so that they understand why that capacity needs to be developed?
I like that.
Yes,
Okay.
I would agree. I would just toss in the word requirements before action plans.
Sorry, what? The word requirement where?
Before action plans.
And require instead of creates?
No, creates requirements And yeah, before it creates action plan, yes. So we should give CTAR some requirements of what we need or we expect from them. It's really useful.
I don't know if we can require them to do anything. They're not
It's not a requirement to do something. It's our requirements that we would expect from them. So you don't want to use the word expectations, but it's the Department of Agriculture needs to rely on CTAR to deliver certain things. So we call that requirements.
okay. If we move this from here and then over here into this bullet point, coordinates with research institutions to collect and collate data,
Right.
and provide expectation for research. Is that what you mean? Or expectations or requirements for research?
The Department of Agriculture should provide requirements for research, yes. Because the department should be looking far into the future, so they're going to actually need to research some future things that CTAR may not have an attention span on.
Okay. Do we want to say requirements, or can we word it in a more friendly tone that these existing research institutions won't feel attacked? I feel like the word requirement, usually it gets taken as like we're going to start regulating. And I don't want them to take it like that.
Requests, yeah.
Or suggestions.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay.
And actually, if I could make a note, I think the CTAR people that I know on the Kapalui campus, they've been doing a pretty good job of outreach and communication with the community. And over the last year, I've been really impressed with the young extension agents, because they've been grappling with stuff that are difficult problems that are hard for an individual farmer to tackle and solve. So they're actually taking the risk to figure out stuff, for example, about varieties of sweet potatoes that would do really well. And they've been doing really great work bringing in different sweet potato cultivars. And they've been doing research on garlic and the best ways to successfully grow garlic here. So I've been impressed with the young extension agents. And I think they get a lot of input from the farmers. And I'm not sure that they would necessarily need suggestions from the Department of Ag, because a good extension agent should be out there, boots on the ground, finding out what farmers are grappling with.
Yep.
Fine. So develop databases to collect and collate data needed. Come on, sorry. Ag sector. Okay, can we take out start as soon as possible and keep it up season by season, or do we want to leave that in? Or it does the first sentence kind of put that on, and then the community would prioritize when that got implemented? I think that is something that should be implemented, but do we want to say start as soon as possible?
Keep them how you said.
Sorry, what?
Keep them how you said.
Just
Not like-
the first sentence?
Yeah, and then, you know,
Okay.
parties don't come off there.
Okay, so
That's just my suggestion.
we've got develop databases to collect and collate the data needed for the department and the ag sector and promote data awareness, establish a pipeline and database for farmers to access available resources, coordinate with research institutions to collect and collate data and provide suggestions for research, implement community assessments, or is that kind of already in the data collection? Databases. We can just put it inside implement community assessments, and then identify issues, research solutions, and develop action plans to address the issues. So we can start it out with the create the capacity for research and development within the department too, and then all of these things under that. Is that okay?
Looks good.
Okay. And then we've got ozone treatment, so leave that in. And then the next one we need to combine is the grants, access grants, money and available, access to grants and available money, advocate to get more funding for local use, blanket grants, allow farmers to hui up and apply collectively for grants and funding, grant writer on staff to provide technical assistance, and then hire a minimum of 4 grant writers to focus on capital improvement project funding for the county via the department, and 2 to focus on blanket grants for community-based needs, with 1 of the 2 specifically focused on servicing Molokai and Lanai.
That seems like a lot of grant writers.
Well, grant writers pay for themselves. So if we start with more grant writers, that's just more money going into the system. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Might be a upfront cost that will pay for itself, like right off the top. Oh, Lauren said it's off topic, but have you seen the sunset? It's really beautiful. I don't know.
Stunning. Wow.
I don't
Yeah,
know
it
if you
is.
can see it, but it is really pretty. Everybody should look outside. Sorry
Yep.
for keeping you guys during sunset. Okay. This one that I put with the 4 grant writers is mine. I just think specifically because when we get to the budget part, when we're specific like this, it's going to help us. So if we say 4 grant writers or 3 grant writers or however many grant writers, and we get the community approval on that, when we come to the budget process part, the more specific we are, that's going to help us. So, you know, all of these things, if we're saying this and then it gets prioritized as like, yes, this should be done in the first year, second or third year. If it gets put in the first year, we're going to have to come up with a proposed budget for it. So that's kind of why I was specific about 4, because I thought that it could really make an impact if we had 2 for capital improvement projects. So that's like processing and distribution facilities, slaughterhouses, like things like that. And then 2 to do grant writing on behalf of the community and like do those blanket grants. But if we don't want to be specific, that's okay. It's just going to be a little bit harder when it comes time to doing the proposed budget for the first year.
No, ask for 4 and you'll get 2.
I like that logic, and we should ask for, I would ask for a higher number. Yeah, or at least, yeah, the maximum that we had listed. Good idea.
Do we want to add 1 for technical assistance? Or do we want to just have them to actually be able to write the grants on behalf of the community?
So a grant writer on staff would provide technical assistance to the Department of Agriculture or to farmers who are applying for grants?
That was from the group, so I'm not sure which group wrote that one. Can somebody clarify?
Oh, I don't know. I
I
don't
don't
think
know
we
if
need
it
a
was our group, but I would believe it is for the farmers.
For the
Actually,
farmers. Okay.
that'll be what I would, if I said that, that's how I would intend it.
Yeah, that's what I would think too. It's not gonna need to provide it to the county because the county's gonna hire qualified people, hopefully, to be these grant writers. So this would be more technical assistance, but I know that there are some organizations that do provide technical assistance. So that might be something that like we could put as a priority, like help to develop more grant writers within the county and provide technical assistance. Or do we want someone on staff at the department to provide technical assistance?
I guess I'm wondering if those 4 grant writers, if they can, I mean, would they be busy every day working on capital improvement grants and stuff like that? Wouldn't they be able to, one of them like once a week or twice a month or something like that, be able to provide assistance to farmers that are applying for grants?
My guess, if it's just 2 working on capital improvement projects for the entire county, they're gonna be pretty busy, yeah. Because those are like $1 million grants. So the information that they would have to go out and get and put into place to write those grants is gonna be pretty significant. And then once you have those grants allocated, they'd be tasked with reporting.
Okay.
So I don't think
so
that
the-
they would have the time to provide technical assistance to, you would probably have to increase the number. Just from my experience, grant writing and reporting, like that is like, it's a full-time job and it's like a lot of work. So once you get into the federal grants and USD grants where it's like millions of dollars and you're doing large countywide projects, that's a lot of work.
Okay.
Hi, Jennifer, this is
Yeah.
Kenneth. I had a question. They just finished another fiscal year, the county, and the Economic Development Office has a grant writer. And I was curious, what was her success as far as bringing in money? Everybody assumes they pay for themselves. I'm just curious if that's true.
So I don't know what they brought in.
I don't know when they come up with, because they report, I know we had to report what we accomplished. So I'm just curious, because that would be a selling point. In other words, if Claudine could bring in like $5 million worth of grants, well, great.
Yeah.
Hire 6 grant writers. I just think it makes the case. But if she didn't succeed in doing that, now what?
Yeah.
How are you going to convince the council? Well, that's a good idea.
So in our second survey, one of the reporting requirements is how much funding was
To see, right? How
received.
effective was it?
So I
Correct.
don't think that OED does that. I don't think that they report on that. And so
I had to do that. Everybody in our office had to do that.
But
You
do
do a
they-
yearly report.
they
Yeah,
report that to
report
the
on
council.
everybody. Yes, because you're justifying what you did. What did you accomplish? Now this is a grant writer, so what did she accomplish? I don't know. I haven't seen the final report, but I know we had to.
Does that
because
get
when you
reported to
go
the
into-
council or the administration, Kenneth?
I think both look at it.
Because I don't remember seeing
yeah.
that information, and maybe it was just I
Okay.
didn't see it. So that's quite
Well,
possible.
I
that I
just
just didn't
think-
see it.
They would kind of, I mean, if you're not pulling your weight, then why would they keep you? So you got to demonstrate you're pulling your weight. So I would think there's some evaluation process somewhere. And I think the administration and the council, because, well, our jobs were, with the mayor, so he can hire and fire. He's not civil servant. So it made a difference.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. I just curious because it would make the case if this grant writer is bringing in X number of dollars, you can look at it and say, okay, it pays for itself.
Well, and then there's also, you know, just because one grant writer is not bringing in money, it might just be that they're not a good grant writer, not that the whole position is a wash.
Well, like you have a position for Molokai and Lanai, and Molokai has a bigger Hawaiian community, and you know, there's grants specifically for the Hawaiians. I mean, that maybe outsiders don't get. So it would make a difference, I think, just on that.
Yeah, I think, you know, that's why I put with one of the two for the blanket grants specifically for servicing Molokai and Lanai, because their grant needs and what they're going to be, sorry, I can't think of what they're going to meet the requirements for as grants. They're going to have a lot more opportunities than Maui is going to, because of their, you know, being so rural in their transportation needs and something. So having one of those grant writers focus on those two islands specifically, I think, and then you could write blanket grants for those two islands because they have similar needs, but not exactly the same, but they're different from Maui.
So should you say like Molokai, Lanai, and Hana?
Well, Molokai and Lanai are different because they don't have a road that they
Yeah,
can
I
get.
know.
Yeah.
But Hana is
Jennifer, the Hana is as a rural and special hub zone. So yes, I would say those three. They're recognized in multiple places as being remote.
So one of the two focusing specifically on servicing Molokai, Lanai, and Hana.
Right, remote rural areas. Yes.
Remote communities. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to highlight this, you guys, as where we leave off for the evening, because we are at our time and I don't want to keep you guys past. So this is where we'll start up at the next meeting. I just want to give you guys a reminder, please share the second survey and note that it is the second survey. So if they took the first one, this is a different one, so that we can get as many responses as possible for that one. If anybody needs the link, again, I will send it out in the follow-up meeting for this for this meeting, or I can just, or you can, I'll put it in the chat right now too.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you guys. Oh, is it gonna let me? I'm gonna stop sharing my screen real quick so I can put it in the chat if anybody wants the survey link right now for the second one. And thank you guys all for coming and all of your hard work. I will ask Carrie about the folks that did want to be invited to the meeting. If you have any questions, I'll be on for a little bit afterwards. I appreciate you guys all so much, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.
Thanks. Good night.
Bye.
Thanks for all your hard work.
Thank you guys.
Thanks, Jen and everyone. Thank you.